How much of your energy has been wasted on arguments that lead nowhere? How many times have you found yourself entangled in conflicts that drain your spirit, leaving you exhausted and frustrated? There is a hidden power that few have mastered, yet it holds the potential to transform your life entirely. The power of ignoring. But this isn't about indifference, it's about wisdom. Because sometimes the greatest act of intelligence is not proving yourself right, but choosing not to react at all. From childhood, we are conditioned to believe that if someone attacks us, we must defend ourselves. If someone challenges our beliefs, we need to prove them wrong. But what if that's exactly what the other person wants? Think about it for a moment. When someone insults you or throws a cruel remark your way, are they genuinely interested in understanding your perspective? No, they simply want a reaction. They want to see that they have affected you, that they've found a way under your skin. That's how they gain power over you. And every time you fall into this trap, you hand over your energy to someone who doesn't deserve it. It's like sailing a boat, but instead of moving forward, you stop every time someone throws a rock at you, just to pick it up and throw it back. Without realizing it, you waste time, drift off course, and exhaust yourself over something meaningless. The worst part? This reaction has become automatic. The moment we feel challenged, we lash out without thinking. Someone says something hurtful, and before we even process it, we are caught in a heated argument, voices raised, desperately trying to prove our point. But at the end of these conflicts, what do we really gain? How often does an argument end with both sides shaking hands saying, "That was wonderful, we completely understand each other now"? Never. Because most arguments aren't about understanding, they're about ego. The ego wants to defend itself, it wants to win. It wants to prove superiority. But real strength doesn't come from proving anything. It comes from not needing to. There's an old Buddhist story of a man who was insulted by a stranger on the street. Instead of reacting, he simply smiled and walked away. A bystander, puzzled by his response, asked why he hadn't defended himself. The man replied, "If someone offers you a gift and you refuse to take it, to whom does the gift still belong?" The same applies to insults, criticism, and negativity. They are gifts that you don't have to accept. Yet most of us receive these toxic offerings instantly without question. Every time we react to provocation, we allow someone else's words to control our emotions. But you don't have to live like this. You don't have to engage in every battle. You don't have to respond to every comment. There is immense power in choosing to ignore, not out of apathy, but out of wisdom. Out of the deep understanding that not everything deserves your energy. Sometimes the smartest thing you can do is nothing. Simply observe. Watch as someone tries to provoke you and don't give them what they seek. Notice how they expect a reaction and instead give them silence. This is when the power dynamic shifts. Because the person who doesn't react, the one who refuses to be drawn into the drama, is the one who truly holds control. If you throw a stone into a pond, the water ripples for a moment, but then returns to stillness. It doesn't hold on to the disturbance. It doesn't resist. It simply flows. But humans are different. We don't just react when provoked. We actively seek conflict, often without even realizing it. Why? Because we've been conditioned to argue as if proving we're right somehow makes us stronger. But the truth is, most arguments aren't about truth at all. They're about validation. When someone contradicts us, we don't just hear a different opinion. We feel as though our identity is being questioned. And that makes us uncomfortable, so we fight back. Not to understand, but to defend who we believe we are. As if losing an argument means losing a piece of ourselves. But if you look closely, you'll notice something interesting. Most conflicts don't arise from a genuine search for understanding. They come from unresolved emotions. A person who has had a bad day is more likely to pick a fight. Someone who feels insecure will try to bring others down. More often than not, arguments aren't about the actual topic at all. They're about the baggage people carry inside them. And here's where it gets even more fascinating. If that baggage is filled with anger, frustration, or fear, and you engage in their game, you end up absorbing their energy. What starts as a simple disagreement turns into an emotional battlefield. At some point, the original topic becomes irrelevant, It's no longer about who's right, it's just about winning. Many believe that avoiding an argument means surrendering, backing down, or admitting defeat. But there is a far more intelligent way to handle conflict, one that doesn't involve avoidance, but strategy. The truth is, most arguments don't start with logic, they start with emotion. When someone lashes out, they aren't always speaking from a place of reason. More often than not, they are reacting from frustration, insecurity, or anger. And if you respond with that same energy, the clash is inevitable. Ignoring what doesn't deserve your attention is just the first step. But the real transformation happens when you strengthen your mind to the point where provocations no longer even register as significant. It's not just that you resist reacting, you stop perceiving certain triggers as worthy of a reaction at all. The noise around you doesn't just affect you less, it ceases to be noise altogether. But how do you reach that state? Understanding the theory isn't enough. You have to train your mind daily, just like you would train your body if you wanted to become stronger. Emotional stability isn't something people are simply born with. It's a skill. And like any skill, it requires practice and dedication. One of the first steps is to observe your mind without judgment. Every time you feel the urge to argue, to justify yourself, to react, pause. Don't focus on what the other person is saying. Focus on what's happening inside you. What emotion is rising? Where is this need to respond coming from? Is it your ego? Is it insecurity? Is it the fear of seeming weak? Identifying the root of your reaction is far more useful than forcing yourself to ignore something without understanding why it affects you in the first place. Another powerful practice is detachment. Buddhism constantly reminds us that nothing is permanent, not criticism, not conflicts, not even our own identity. Today, something might bother you deeply, but in a month or a year, will it still matter? Every time you feel upset, ask yourself, will this be important a year from now? If the answer is no, then why give it so much weight today? Meditation is another fundamental pillar. You don't need to sit for hours in complete silence. Just a few minutes a day, focusing on your breath, can make a profound difference. Training yourself not to react to every intrusive thought is the same as training yourself not to react to every external provocation. If you can calm the storm inside you, no storm outside can shake you. It's also important to be mindful of your environment. You may not be able to control everything around you, but you can control what you consume, who you spend time with, and what you give importance to. If you constantly surround yourself with arguments, negativity, and unnecessary conflicts, your mind will absorb that energy. But if you choose to fill your life with peace, with meaningful conversations, with moments of stillness, that peace will become your natural state. And here's something else. Learn to see life with humor. Not everything needs to be taken so seriously. Many of the things that upset us only do so because we assign them too much importance. But when you learn to laugh at certain conflicts, to see them as an unnecessary show that you don't need to participate in, life becomes much lighter. This isn't about avoiding reality. It's about refusing to carry burdens that were never yours in the first place. Over time, you'll realize that external provocations stop affecting you, not because you're making a conscious effort to ignore them, but because they simply no longer resonate with you. There is nothing inside you that responds to them anymore. And that is when you reach an unshakable mind. Because in the end, it's not just about avoiding arguments or ignoring criticism. It's about living with a peace that depends on nothing and no one. It's about waking up each day knowing that nothing external has the power to take away your inner calm. It's about walking through the world without fear of what others think or say. And when you reach that point, you realize the truth. Freedom isn't about controlling what happens outside. It's about mastering what happens inside. Imagine how different your life would be if you no longer felt the need to react to every comment, every criticism, every attempt to provoke you. Imagine the kind of peace you could experience if nothing external had the power to disrupt your inner balance. Not because you're suppressing your emotions, not because you don't care, but because you've cultivated something far more powerful, control over where you place your attention. Most people go through life reacting to everything. They argue over things that don't matter. They waste time trying to prove a point. They get emotionally exhausted defending themselves against opinions that don't deserve a second of their energy. But when you free yourself from this cycle, you unlock a level of tranquility that very few people ever experience. This isn't about letting others walk all over you. It's not about staying silent when your voice is needed. It's about knowing the difference between what deserves your energy and what doesn't. It's about understanding that not every battle is worth fighting, and not every opinion about you is worth addressing. Buddhism teaches that suffering doesn't come from what happens to us. It comes from how we respond to it. And this is where your true power lies. When you stop engaging in meaningless conflicts, when you stop letting others dictate your emotions, when you realize that you don't need validation from anyone to feel at peace, that's when you truly become free. So I invite you to take this practice into your daily life. The next time someone tries to drag you into an argument, pause. The next time you feel the urge to react, ask yourself, is this worth my peace? And if the answer is no, then choose to walk away. Choose your well-being over the temporary satisfaction of proving a point. Choose calmness over chaos. And in doing so, you'll discover something extraordinary. The more you detach from unnecessary battles, the more energy you have for what truly matters. When you stop feeding the distractions, your focus sharpens. When you stop pouring energy into conflicts, your mind becomes lighter. When you stop seeking validation, you begin to understand your own worth. And once you experience that level of freedom, you'll wonder why you ever gave your energy away so carelessly before. Because in the end, the greatest power you can ever hold is not in proving yourself to others. It's in no longer needing to. But what if you broke the cycle before it even began? What if, instead of feeding the fire, you let it burn out on its own? One of the most effective ways to disarm conflict is by using language that doesn't invite further confrontation. Instead of getting defensive, you can say things like, "I understand your perspective," or "Let's revisit this later when we're both calm." These responses don't mean you agree, but they also don't give the other person more fuel to keep pushing. Another key strategy is refusing to take things personally. People often argue about things that have nothing to do with you. They are simply looking for a place to unload their frustrations. And if you refuse to engage, they have no reason to keep fighting. A simple, neutral response like, "I'm not going to argue about this right now," or even total silence, can make them realize their attempt at conflict is futile. Humor can also be a powerful tool. If someone expects you to get angry, but instead you respond with humor or a calm demeanor, you take away their power. Not because you are dismissing the situation, but because you refuse to let their negativity dictate your reaction. The most important thing to remember is this: you are never obligated to participate in every argument someone tries to start. You don't have to prove anything. You don't have to convince anyone. You can walk away from conflict without saying a single word, and that doesn't mean you lost. On the contrary, it means you've gained something far more valuable: your peace. When you start applying these strategies, you realize that true power isn't in winning arguments. It's in not needing them. And when you reach that level, you unlock something even greater: the freedom to detach from anything that doesn't add value to your life. Now imagine waking up one day and realizing that nothing external has the power to disturb your inner peace. That no matter what people say, no matter how much someone tries to provoke you, it simply doesn't reach you. Not because you're avoiding reality, but because you've developed something far more powerful: a mind that cannot be shaken. This is what happens when you master the art of not getting hooked. It's not about ignoring everything or pretending not to care. It's about truly understanding that most conflicts, most arguments, most provocations, none of them actually deserve your energy. And once you realize this, you free yourself from a burden that most people carry without even noticing. The truth is, most people live at the mercy of what happens around them. If someone insults them, their mood shifts instantly. If someone disagrees with them, they feel personally attacked. If someone criticizes them, they feel the need to respond. In other words, their peace is entirely dependent on the actions of others. But when you stop reacting, when you stop letting external circumstances dictate your internal state, something incredible happens. You take back control. Think about it. How many of your worst days have been bad not because of what actually happened, but because of how you reacted to it? How much unnecessary stress have you created by engaging in situations that could have been ignored? How much energy have you wasted fighting battles that were never worth fighting in the first place? When you learn to let go, to detach from meaningless conflicts, you start seeing life differently. You realize that most of what used to upset you was never really that important. You stop giving power to things that don't deserve it. You stop feeling the need to prove yourself in every conversation. You stop carrying burdens that were never yours to carry. This isn't about becoming emotionless. It's about becoming selective with your energy. It's about deciding consciously what deserves your response and what doesn't. And most of the time, the answer is, it doesn't. Buddhism teaches that suffering comes from attachment. And one of the biggest attachments people have is the need to be right, the need to be understood, the need to defend their opinions. But when you detach from that need, when you realize that your peace is more valuable than winning an argument, you gain something far greater than being right. You gain freedom, and this is where everything shifts. You're no longer a slave to reactions. You don't get dragged into other people's emotional chaos. You no longer waste hours defending yourself to those who don't even want to understand you. You stop being affected by things that, in the grand scheme of life, don't actually matter. Of course, this doesn't mean you let people walk all over you. It doesn't mean you tolerate disrespect. What it means is that you choose how you respond. You set your boundaries, not by reacting, but by standing firm in your peace. Because nothing confuses and disarms an aggressor more than someone who refuses to engage. And the best part? When you master this, the people around you notice. Those who used to provoke you stop trying because they no longer get the reaction they crave. Those who used to argue with you lose interest because they see you are no longer emotionally invested. And over time, you start attracting a different kind of energy, one that matches the inner peace you've cultivated. This is the kind of peace that cannot be faked. It's the kind of peace that comes from knowing that nothing external can take away what's inside you. It's a peace that doesn't depend on approval, validation, or having the last word. And once you experience it, you'll never want to go back. Because the ultimate freedom isn't doing whatever you want. It's not needing anything from anyone to be at peace. It's knowing that no matter what happens, no matter what anyone says, you remain unshaken. So the next time someone tries to drag you into their storm, don't fight it. Just smile. Stay still. Let them exhaust themselves. Let the noise pass like wind through the trees. Because when you stop giving unnecessary things your attention, you start gaining something far more valuable. Your own peace. But winning what, exactly? What do you truly gain from winning an argument when the other person wasn't even listening in the first place? Nothing. Just more exhaustion, more tension, more distance. We get caught in endless debates with our partners, our friends, even complete strangers on the internet. And at the end of the day, we are left drained. And for what? Nothing has changed. Buddhism teaches that suffering comes from attachment. And so often we are far too attached to our opinions, to our need to be understood, to the belief that if someone disagrees with us, we have somehow failed. But what if we let go of that attachment? What if we stop seeing every disagreement as a personal attack? Because here's the truth. You don't need everyone to agree with you. You don't need to convince anyone for your truth to remain valid. There is something incredibly liberating about realizing this. And this is where the power of non-reaction comes in. It's not about silencing yourself. It's not about avoiding meaningful conversations. It's about learning to recognize the difference between a discussion that can lead to growth and one that will only drain your energy. It's about knowing when to speak and when to walk away. Because ignoring something isn't always a sign of indifference. Sometimes it's a sign of wisdom. And when you learn to ignore what doesn't deserve your attention, you unlock something even more powerful. There is a power in silence that most people fail to understand. In a world where everyone feels the need to react, to defend themselves, to justify their opinions, choosing not to respond is an act of self-mastery. Ignoring doesn't mean surrendering. It means refusing to participate in a game where no one truly wins. Imagine standing before someone who is shouting at you, waiting for you to snap back. Their words are sharp, their tone is heated, and they are determined to pull you into their chaos. But instead of giving them what they want, you remain still. You don't flinch. You don't change your expression. You don't engage. The person grows frustrated. They raise their voice, pushing harder for a reaction. But you give them none. And then something interesting happens. Their energy begins to fade. Their anger starts to lose its power. Without your participation, their storm has nowhere to land. That is the art of the non-response. Most of the time when people try to provoke us, they're not looking for a meaningful conversation. They're looking for control. They want to see you lose composure, to stumble over your words, to scramble for a defense. They are casting a line, hoping you'll bite. And the best way to win that game is simply not to play. This isn't about suppressing your emotions or pretending not to care. It's about pausing before you act. It's about asking yourself, does this deserve my energy? Will this discussion lead anywhere, or will it simply trap me in an endless cycle? Because every time you choose to respond, you are making an investment, and your attention is one of the most valuable things you possess. The ego tells us that if we don't respond, we are losing. That if someone challenges us and we don't fight back, it means they've won. But the truth is, nothing is more powerful than showing that no one can shake you. Calmness disarms anyone. There's an old Buddhist saying, the wind can stir up dust, but it cannot move a mountain. When you practice the art of non-reaction, you become that mountain. This doesn't mean you don't feel emotions. It doesn't mean that nothing matters to you. It means you decide which battles are worth fighting and which ones don't deserve even a second of your peace. Because sometimes the best response is no response at all. Not because you have nothing to say, but because your silence speaks louder than words. When someone tries to provoke you and doesn't get the reaction they expect, they realize they have no power over you. And when people see they cannot manipulate you with their words, they stop trying. But something even deeper happens in this practice. It doesn't just protect you from unnecessary conflict, it strengthens your mind, it sharpens your awareness, it teaches you to observe without being consumed. Most of our emotions are just passing impulses. Anger, frustration, the urge to defend ourselves. They flare up in an instant, but if left alone, they dissolve just as quickly. The problem is, we act on them too soon. We feel the fire rise inside us, and before we even realize what's happening, we react. We say things we later regret. We give our energy to people who don't deserve it. But what if we didn't? What if we allowed emotions to pass through us without acting on them? The non-response isn't just a tool for avoiding arguments, it's a path to inner freedom. When you stop depending on the opinions of others, when you no longer feel the need to validate yourself in every conversation, you begin to experience a level of peace that cannot be bought. And in that state of calm, something powerful emerges. Clarity. When you're not caught up in meaningless debates, you have more time to think, more space to create, more energy to focus on what truly matters. And most importantly, you begin to understand something that will change your life forever. Not everything deserves your attention. Because when you learn to stay silent at the right moments, you also learn when to speak. And that is where true wisdom lies. Ignoring for the sake of ignoring is pointless. But knowing when to speak and when to remain silent, that is power. Not everything deserves a response. But that doesn't mean we should stay silent in every situation. There are moments when silence gives us peace, but there are also moments when speaking up can change everything. The key is knowing when your voice adds value and when it is best left unspoken. The problem is, we often get this balance wrong. We speak when we shouldn't, and we stay silent when we should. We let emotions take over. We react to provocations without thinking. But when it comes to matters that truly need our voice, we hesitate, we hold back, and that imbalance creates inner conflict. Buddhism teaches that before speaking, we should ask ourselves 3 questions. Is it true? Is it necessary? Is it kind? If the answer to any of these is no, then silence is often the wiser choice. But when all 3 answers are yes, then your words can become a powerful tool. If someone attacks you just to provoke a reaction, you don't need to defend yourself, not because you lack arguments, but because you know the discussion will lead nowhere. But if someone is genuinely trying to understand, if there is an opportunity for real dialogue, then it's worth speaking. Because silence, when used wisely, is not indifference. It is strategy. Think about how many times you've tried to explain something to someone who simply refuses to listen. No matter how well you articulate your thoughts, that person has already decided not to change their mind. So why waste your energy? You don't need to correct everyone. You don't need to win every conversation. Some battles, even if you win them, aren't worth fighting. But there are also times when silence is not an option. When someone crosses a boundary, when your words can prevent harm, when speaking up can protect someone else. In those moments, choosing silence is not wisdom, it's avoidance. And avoidance has a price. The problem is that we often confuse ego with truth. We think we need to respond because our pride is at stake. But the ego isn't looking for truth, it's looking to dominate. And when you understand this, you begin to let go of the need to respond to everything. Not everything deserves your voice, but some things need to be said. Knowing the difference is what separates an impulsive reaction from a wise response. And when you master that balance, your life changes. You stop wasting energy on empty conflicts. You stop investing your time in debates that lead nowhere. You stop trying to prove yourself to people who have already made up their minds. Instead, you begin using your words where they truly matter. And that is where everything starts to shift. Because once you learn to stay silent when silence is wisdom, and to speak when speaking is necessary, you unlock something even more powerful, the ability to deactivate conflict before it even begins. And that is one of the most valuable skills you can ever develop. Most people live their lives controlled by reactions. They wake up and immediately respond to the demands of others, the notifications, the comments, the expectations. They go through the day absorbing emotions from the people around them, allowing circumstances to dictate their mood. If someone criticizes them, they feel offended. If someone challenges their opinion, they feel the need to prove themselves. If something doesn't go their way, frustration takes over. But what if none of these things had power over you? What if you could move through the world unaffected by unnecessary conflict, unshaken by trivial problems, undisturbed by the noise around you? This is what happens when you learn to master your responses, not by controlling the outside world, but by controlling your own mind. You see, the real battle has never been with other people. It has always been with yourself. The external world will always test you. There will always be provocations, criticisms, unexpected challenges. But the way you experience life isn't determined by what happens to you. It's determined by how you respond to it. And most people, they respond unconsciously. They don't choose their reactions choose them. They allow their emotions to dictate their behavior without even realizing it. They don't pause to ask themselves, is this worth my energy? Instead, they react on autopilot, falling into the same patterns, the same arguments, the same exhausting cycles, over and over again. But the moment you realize that you don't have to engage, that you don't have to react to every situation, that you don't have to waste energy on things that don't serve you, that is the moment you take back your power. Think about it. Have you ever had a day where something small ruined your entire mood? Maybe someone cut you off in traffic. Maybe a stranger made a rude comment. Maybe someone disagreed with you and you felt the need to prove yourself. But in the grand scheme of your life, did any of it truly matter? Did allowing those small moments to control your emotions bring you any peace? Or did it just drain you? Most of our suffering doesn't come from the events themselves. It comes from our attachment to them, the need to be right, the need to be understood, the need to defend ourselves. But what if you could let go of that need? What if, instead of being controlled by the chaos around you, you became the stillness in the storm? Because here's the truth, not every battle is meant to be fought. Not every opinion is worth addressing. Not every conflict is worth your energy. The greatest strength is not in fighting every battle. It's in knowing which battles are beneath you. Imagine standing at the edge of a vast, still lake. Someone throws a rock into the water, and for a moment, ripples form. But soon the water returns to stillness. It does not chase the rock. It does not try to throw it back. It simply absorbs the impact and continues to be at peace. Now imagine your mind working in the same way. No matter what others say or do, you remain unaffected. Their words do not control you. Their actions do not dictate your emotions. You remain centered, steady, unshaken. This is the power of non-reaction. Most people waste their lives reacting to things that don't matter. They spend hours arguing with strangers online. They hold grudges over words that should have been forgotten. They allow external forces to pull them away from their inner peace. And for what? Nothing. Because at the end of the day, none of it actually changes anything. The person who insulted you, they've already moved on. The argument you had, it led nowhere. The frustration you carried, it only affected you. So why keep giving your power away? The moment you stop reacting to things that don't serve you is the moment you set yourself free. But freedom requires discipline. It requires awareness. It requires the ability to pause and ask yourself, is this worth my peace? And most of the time, the answer will be no. This doesn't mean you let people disrespect you. It doesn't mean you tolerate negativity. It simply means you choose when to engage and when to let things pass through you like the wind. It means recognizing that your energy is sacred and you will not waste it on meaningless battles. It means understanding that true power comes not from dominating others, but from being in control of yourself. And once you master this, something incredible happens. People start treating you differently. The ones who used to provoke you will stop trying because they see they can no longer control your emotions. The ones who thrive on conflict will lose interest because they realize they cannot drag you into their chaos. And the ones who truly respect you will admire the way you carry yourself, the way you remain calm in the face of storms, the way you refuse to let the world dictate your emotions. Because when you radiate peace, you attract peace. But this kind of mastery doesn't happen overnight. It takes practice. It takes awareness. It takes a conscious effort to rise above the distractions, to detach from the noise, to remain centered in a world that is constantly trying to pull you in different directions. So how do you begin? Start by observing your reactions. The next time someone tries to provoke you, don't respond immediately. Pause, breathe, ask yourself, is this worth my energy? If it's not, let it go. Walk away. Protect your peace. Over time, this practice will become second nature. You will no longer feel the need to react. You will no longer feel the urge to prove yourself. You will no longer be controlled by external forces. And in that moment, you will have achieved something that most people never will. You will have become untouchable, not because you avoid conflict, but because conflict no longer controls you. Not because you suppress your emotions, but because you have mastered them. Not because you have silenced yourself, but because you now speak only when it truly matters. And that is where true power lies. Imagine walking through life with a mind so steady, so unshaken, that nothing can disturb your inner peace. No insult can rattle you. No argument can trap you. No negative energy can drain you. Not because you are avoiding life, but because you have mastered the art of not giving power to what doesn't serve you. This is the freedom most people never experience. Because most people are controlled by their reactions, they let others dictate their emotions. They let circumstances decide their mood. They spend their days responding to problems, defending themselves, proving their worth, exhausting themselves over things that, in the end, never really mattered. But what if you could break free from that cycle? What if instead of being a slave to reactions, you became the master of your own energy? Because the truth is, your energy is one of the most valuable things you have. And yet most people give it away without a second thought. They give it to strangers on the internet who don't even know them. They give it to people who thrive on drama and negativity. They give it to arguments that lead nowhere, to conflicts that drain them, to situations that steal their peace. And at the end of the day, what do they have left? Exhaustion, frustration, regret. But you don't have to live like that. You can choose to protect your energy. You can choose to walk away from meaningless battles. You can choose to stay silent when silence is the wiser path. And in doing so, you gain something most people never do: control over your own mind. Because here's the truth: the one who reacts the most is the weakest. The one who stays calm is the strongest. Think about it. Have you ever seen a truly powerful person scream and argue to prove themselves? Number. Because true power doesn't come from reacting, it comes from restraint. The more in control you are of your emotions, the more powerful you become. The less you need to respond, the more respect you command. The more selective you are with your words, the more people listen when you actually speak. And the best part? When you stop reacting, when you stop giving your energy to meaningless conflicts, your life starts to change. You begin to attract people who value peace as much as you do. You start to notice that the things that once upset you no longer have power over you. You become lighter, calmer, stronger. And suddenly you realize something profound. Most of what you thought mattered never really did. Because the greatest trick the world plays on you is making you believe that you have to engage with every challenge, that you have to fight every battle, that you have to prove yourself at every turn. But you don't. The most powerful people in the world aren't the ones who fight the most. They're the ones who fight the least, because they know something most people don't. Not everything deserves a response. The moment you stop reacting to things that don't serve you, you reclaim your peace. You reclaim your focus. You reclaim your life. But this requires discipline. It requires awareness. It requires the ability to recognize when you are being pulled into a battle that isn't worth fighting. So the next time someone tries to provoke you, ask yourself, will this matter in a year? Is this worth my energy? Does this deserve my response? And if the answer is no, then walk away. Protect your peace. Let them have their argument. Let them drown in their own negativity. Because you have better things to focus on. You have a life to build. You have dreams to chase. You have inner peace to cultivate. And that is far more valuable than proving a point to someone who was never going to listen in the first place. Because here's the truth. Most arguments aren't about truth. They're about ego. Most conflicts aren't about understanding. They're about control. Most provocations aren't about conversation. They're about manipulation. And the moment you see that, you stop engaging. You stop giving your power away. You stop letting people pull you into their chaos. And that's when your life truly begins to change. You start feeling lighter because you're no longer carrying the weight of unnecessary conflicts. You start feeling calmer because you're no longer wasting energy on meaningless battles. You start feeling stronger because you're no longer reacting. You're choosing. And choice is the ultimate power. Because most people don't choose their reactions. They let their reactions choose them. They let emotions dictate their behavior. They let circumstances control their peace. But not you. You are no longer controlled by the world around you. You are no longer a prisoner of other people's words. You are no longer someone who gets pulled into every little conflict. You are in control. You decide what deserves your energy. You decide when to speak and when to stay silent. You decide what truly matters. And when you reach this level of self-mastery, you realize something incredible. The world around you doesn't change. People still argue. People still provoke. People still try to pull you into their drama. But you no longer respond. You no longer engage. You no longer give your power away. And because of that, you rise above it all. Because peace isn't something you find outside of yourself. It's something you create within. And when you create it, nothing can take it away. There is a moment in life when you realize that most of what you've been fighting for never truly mattered. That the arguments, the conflicts, the endless need to prove yourself, they were never about truth, but about ego. And the day you recognize this is the day you start to free yourself. Because real power doesn't come from proving a point. It doesn't come from winning arguments. It comes from knowing you don't need to. Most people live their lives trapped in an endless cycle of reaction. They wake up and immediately get pulled into other people's emotions. They absorb the negativity of those around them. They let circumstances dictate their mood. And by the end of the day, they're drained. Not because of what happened, but because of how they allowed themselves to respond. But what if you broke that cycle? What if, instead of reacting, you simply observed? What if instead of fighting every battle, you chose your battles wisely? What if instead of seeking control over external things, you found control within yourself? Because here's the truth. Peace isn't something you find. It's something you create. And the more you protect your peace, the more powerful you become. Think of the ocean. When the wind is strong, the waves are rough. But deep beneath the surface, the water remains still. No matter how violent the storm above, the depths of the ocean remain untouched. Now imagine your mind as that deep, still ocean. No matter what happens on the surface, no matter what others say or do, you remain calm. You remain steady. You remain in control. This is the state of mind that separates those who are controlled by the world from those who control their own world. But reaching this level requires awareness. It requires the ability to pause and ask yourself, does this deserve my energy? Because most things don't. Most arguments lead nowhere. Most conflicts are distractions. Most provocations are designed to steal your focus. And when you stop giving these things your attention, you gain something far more valuable: clarity. You start to see life for what it really is. You start to notice how much time and energy you used to waste on things that didn't matter. You start to feel lighter because you're no longer carrying the unnecessary weight of other people's emotions. And then something incredible happens. Your entire reality shifts. The same situations that used to bother you no longer affect you. The same people who used to trigger you no longer have power over you. The same conflicts that used to consume your mind now seem insignificant because you've changed. You've become untouchable, not because the world has changed, but because you have mastered your response to it. This is where true freedom begins, because most people live their lives at the mercy of their emotions. If someone insults them, they react. If something goes wrong, they panic. If someone disagrees with them, they feel attacked. But when you realize that your reactions are a choice, everything changes. You start to see that you are in control, that nothing and no one can disturb your peace unless you allow them to. That true strength isn't about fighting, it's about knowing when not to fight. Because the strongest person in the room is never the one who yells the loudest. It's the one who remains calm when everyone else loses control. So how do you cultivate this kind of inner strength? It starts with awareness. The next time someone tries to provoke you, pause, observe, notice what's happening inside you. Do you feel the urge to react, to defend yourself, to prove a point? Now ask yourself, is this worth my peace? Most of the time, the answer will be no, because peace is more valuable than being right. Peace is more valuable than proving a point. Peace is more valuable than engaging in a conflict that serves no purpose. And when you truly understand this, you stop reacting. You stop getting pulled into the noise. You stop wasting energy on things that don't add value to your life. Instead, you start focusing on what actually matters. You start choosing your battles. You start investing your energy in things that bring you growth, not stress. You start living in a way that is intentional, deliberate, and free. And that's when everything shifts, because the moment you stop engaging in meaningless conflict, you create space for something greater. You create space for clarity, for creativity, for the kind of wisdom that can only come from stillness. Most people are so caught up in reacting that they never give themselves a chance to think. They never allow themselves the stillness needed to gain real insight. They are too busy arguing, proving, defending, too distracted to see the bigger picture. But the moment you step back, the moment you stop reacting, the moment you allow yourself to simply be, you start to see life differently. You realize that most conflicts are illusions, that most provocations are tests, that most arguments are nothing more than distractions. And once you see this clearly, you can no longer be pulled into the same traps. You no longer waste energy on things that don't deserve it. You no longer react, you respond. And a response is always stronger than a reaction, because reactions come from impulse, but responses come from wisdom. Reactions are emotional, but responses are intentional. Reactions drain you, but responses empower you. And once you master this distinction, you become unstoppable. Because in a world full of people who are controlled by their emotions, the one who controls their mind is the one who holds true power. And true power isn't about control over others. It's about control over yourself. So the next time life presents you with a situation that tempts you to react, pause, breathe. Ask yourself, is this worth my energy? And if the answer is no, let it go. Because nothing is more powerful than a mind that refuses to be disturbed. And when you reach that level, you will realize that you have gained something more valuable than anything else in the world. You have gained yourself. There comes a moment when you realize that the world doesn't need your reaction, it needs your wisdom. Not every battle is yours to fight. Not every argument deserves your energy. Not every person who challenges you is worth your response. And when this realization settles deep within you, life changes. Because most people waste their energy fighting battles that don't serve them. They argue with strangers, defend themselves against meaningless opinions, and allow minor inconveniences to steal their peace. They wake up and immediately surrender to the chaos around them, pulled into distractions that add no real value to their lives. But what if you didn't? What if you walk through life like a still, unwavering force? What if, instead of reacting, you simply observed? What if, instead of proving yourself, you let your silence speak for you? Because the truth is, silence is often the most powerful response. Not because you have nothing to say, but because you know that some things are not worth saying. Think of the wisest people throughout history. They were never the loudest in the room. They were never the ones arguing to prove a point. They didn't waste their breath on those who had already made up their minds. Instead, they carried themselves with presence, with composure, with an unshakable calm that spoke louder than words ever could. And that is the power of non-reaction. Because people who seek conflict are looking for fuel. They want to provoke. They want to test your emotions. They want to control your energy. And the moment you respond, they succeed. The moment you engage, you hand over your power. But what happens when you don't? What happens when they throw insults at you and you remain still? What happens when they try to pull you into their storm, but you refuse to step in? What happens when they expect you to react, but instead you give them silence? They lose their control over you, because the one who doesn't react is the one who holds the true power. You see, most people are ruled by their emotions. If someone offends them, they react. If something doesn't go their way, they complain. If someone questions their beliefs, they defend themselves fiercely. But what they don't realize is that by reacting, they are proving that they can be controlled, that their emotions are not truly theirs, but at the mercy of the world around them. But when you master the art of non-reaction, when you stop allowing external forces to dictate your internal state, you reach a level of power that few ever experience. Because true power is not about dominance. It's about control over yourself. It's about knowing when to speak and when to stay silent. It's about choosing which battles are worth your time and which ones are beneath you. It's about recognizing that your energy is sacred and that not everyone deserves access to it. And when you embrace this, everything changes. Your mind becomes lighter because you are no longer burdened by unnecessary conflicts. Your energy becomes stronger because you are no longer wasting it on things that drain you. Your presence becomes more powerful because you no longer feel the need to prove anything to anyone. And this is the kind of power that cannot be faked, because real strength doesn't need to announce itself. It doesn't need to prove itself. It simply exists. So how do you cultivate this power? It starts with awareness. The next time you feel the urge to react, pause. The next time someone tries to provoke you, breathe. The next time you feel the need to prove yourself, step back and ask, is this worth my peace? Because most of the time it isn't. Most arguments are distractions. Most conflicts are a waste of energy. Most provocations are a test to see if you will hand over your power. And the moment you realize this, you stop falling into the trap. You stop engaging in conflicts that lead nowhere. You stop wasting time defending yourself against opinions that don't matter. You stop reacting to every little inconvenience that life throws your way, and instead, you become the observer. You watch as people try to provoke you, but their words no longer affect you. You listen as others argue, but you feel no need to participate. You witness the chaos around you, but it no longer disturbs your inner peace. And in doing so, you free yourself. Because the moment you stop reacting, the moment you stop giving your energy away carelessly, you start to reclaim your life. You start to experience a new kind of power. The power of being in complete control of yourself. And the world takes notice. People who once tried to test you will realize they cannot break you. People who once sought to argue with you will lose interest when they see you do not engage. People who once thrived on negativity will disappear when they realize they can no longer influence your emotions. Because when you refuse to react, you take away their power. And when you take away their power, you become untouchable. This is the ultimate freedom, not being controlled by the world around you, but being in full control of yourself. Because peace isn't something you find, it's something you protect. And the strongest people in the world aren't the ones who fight every battle. They are the ones who know which battles aren't worth fighting. They are the ones who walk away from meaningless conflict. They are the ones who choose silence when words will only create more noise. They are the ones who value their peace more than the illusion of being right. And once you become that person, once you master the art of non-reaction, you will realize something incredible. You don't need to prove yourself. You don't need to win every argument.